Well, Salzburgers actually left in 1733. They seek to go inland and find. Well, they had come from the Austrian Alps, so by going inland, maybe we'll find something similar. Boy, were they surprised. But anyway, they located a site which is about, probably in a straight line, 5 miles. It's actually up the Ebenezer Creek on a, I guess, a little bluff. And they sent 9 Salzburger men to go up and build whatever they could build. And the guy that came with the first boatload was a guy named Von Reck. He was called a conductor. And so in his diaries, he says on April the 3rd, we came to the village of Abercorn. Abercorn Landing is all it's there today. It's right down at the very edge of Effingham County, Chatham County line. And then there's some things that's left out. He probably came by the Savannah River to Abercorn. They had to walk and carry everything they had from Abercorn to the site that we know today as Old Ebenezer. This is what he says. When he arrived on April the 4th at Old Ebenezer, they had erected 2 good tents made of the barks of trees, one of which was 40 feet long. They had cut down an abundance of trees in order to breathe the free air. Abercorn is 12 miles to Old Ebenezer. We had to carry our utensils and daily provisions up upon our back. Okay, I sort of think that maybe the translation's a little wrong, because I don't think you can find the barks of trees. They probably built some type of lean-to. If you were watching this thing a while ago, at the start of it, it showed some buildings looked like they're made out of palmetto leaves and things. We don't have birch trees, or we have very few of them. They have them up in the Michigan and Wisconsin area. The Indians made boats out of the barks. I think the translation may be a little bit off when it says the barks of trees. They made some type of a community lean-to shelter, and of course you had to have a roof on it. He says that they toted their utensils. Well, I happened to bring something I found at the farm. Everybody had to have a cooking pot and some utensils. And so, can you imagine today coming to the Effingham County line and walking with all your clothes and whatever you're going to bring, plus a cooking pot, and walk 12 miles? Anybody want to be an example to try that today? Yeah. Anyway, the first boatload arrived on March the 12th, 1734, with 53 people. One of my ancestor families, Swigoffer, was on that boat. Paula Swigoffer, Margarita Swigoffer. My second ancestor, Reeser, got on the boat to come on the first boatload, and one of the 3 sons broke his leg. So they got off and they came on the second boatload. The second boatload arrived on February the 17th, 1736, had 73 individuals. That totals up to be 130 people. Then another small group, which I'm not sure where they came. They're from some other boat. It's only 10 people. So that would be 140. From the time that they arrived, 1 man died at Purisburg on the way. 5 of them died. A family died at Abercorn. And 1 man walked in the woods and never was found again. So we had 7 people. There's 38 people that died. So we had 31 people that died at Old Ebenezer. The next boatload arrived February 1736. Well, by that time, we had lost so many people. We had settled in an area that they said was not producing crops. Now, if you don't get there till April the 4th and you got to clear trees, you probably didn't have much of a garden the first year. And then the second year, I don't know, but they had found a site. This was not the site that they wanted to move to. They wanted to move to what we know is today is Bethany, but Oglethorpe would not let them because he agreed had made a treaty with the Indians that we would not cross Ebenezer Creek. So this was the second choice, Red Bluff. And Von Reck says that the surveyor, Noble Jones, arrived here on March the 5th, 1736, and he laid out of town, and on the 13th of March, 1736, people were assigned house lots. The next boatload arrived on February 6th, 1736, and part of them went to Old Ebenezer, but the rest of them actually came here. We had 38 people that died out of 140 people that came here in the first, that's actually settled at Old Ebenezer. And then another thing that happened, you lay out of town and you got to cut down trees, and you've had some structures at Old Ebenezer, so you got to start from scratch here. You got to start building. So the town didn't actually jump up one day and move here the next because there wasn't nothing here to move to. You had to do the same thing you did there, start over. And one thing that was missing was a sawmill. And the sawmill had been promised and was coming, but the sawmill didn't get here until November the 18th, 1736, 6 months after we moved. And the water in Ebenezer Creek is so slow, and you got to have some droppage, and you got to have a dam and different things. So the original sawmill was put at Old Ebenezer. It was to take 9 months to erect. The town was slowly moving, and then it operated for several years after it was installed. And then a flood came in August the 29th, 1739, and washed out all the supports, and the sawmill collapsed. So what I'm trying to lead up to, the town did move here, but not everybody moved, because we had several people that stayed. A guy named Terrell, I don't know where he came from, but he was a sawmiller at Old Ebenezer. I took Von Reck's book, and I looked through it, and I wanted to find out what kept them alive. And he said that, Von Reck said that they shot stags and roebucks, which is deer, raccoons, squirrels, flying squirrels, turkeys, wild pigeons and small parakeets, sturgeons and catfish in the Savannah River. He said the Indians ate rice, deer, buffalo, and bear. Not beer. Bear. But what I'm trying to say is, he's documenting that we had buffalo here, if he's writing it down.
Wow.
Now, what he didn't write down that I know we have today is doves, ducks, quail, rabbits, possums, and wild hogs. So,
when did the wild hogs get here?
well, I think the domestic ones that we know that run away and become wild hogs, but if you ever seen a wild boar, it's a different animal. It's a
The Spanish brought those, but
Right.
when did they, that was in the 1600s.
I don't know, but I know they're here today. Well, I don't know if they were here or not. He don't mention them,
That's what I don't
but I can tell you, I can show you examples where they are on my farm.
I know they are now.
So, well, I don't know.
They brought them in at Cumberland Island in St. Helena, South
Yeah.
Carolina.
Well, I'm just trying to say that I know they're here today, and he didn't document them. Okay, Von Reck came on the first voyage, and then he went back to Germany, Augsburg, and he brought the third transport that arrived in February 1736. But he documented that the Indians had provided us with a way to make a tea. And it said, Cassina tea tree is like a large thorn bush. Its bark is white and gray. Its leaf is like any other. You have to pluck the leaves in the spring when they are tender, and the Indians, I just happen to have at my farm something called a cassina bush. And so that is what he's talking about. And then the Indians boiled it in hot, scalded it with boiling water, and dried them in some sort of crucible, and then made a tea that tastes like green tea. So it is here today. If you ever plant it, you'll never get rid of it because it'll just keep reproducing itself. But that is a casina bush.
So you could make tea out of that today.
Right.
What about the berries?
I was just going
Well,
to
the
ask the same
berries,
thing.
that's what I said. The berry makes another bush.
No, I mean, are they poisonous if you ate them?
Ma'am, I ain't tried it. I'm just saying that he said a casina bush. That is a casina bush, tree or bush.
Have you ever tried the tea, brother?
No, sir. I just read it in the book. And then I said, I know where a casina is, and it's like a hedge.
I bet it's not like sweet tea.
No, well, I'm saying it could have been used for drinking tea or for medicinal purposes. I don't know. But he writes about it in this book. He describes squash and he describes cucumbers. But in his book, it looks like a pumpkin to me. And then he says, the outer peel is thrown away and the meat is cut into small pieces and cooked in a kettle. I left out a piece. He described it as a squash. It ripens in June and lasts until August. It is inedible raw, must be cooked. The outer peel is thrown away and the meat is cut into small pieces and cooked with the kernel. It tastes like cauliflower, having near the same taste. But anyway, I'm just saying, they didn't come with a whole lot of stuff, and they were promised a lot of provisions to get. And a little booklet right here, if you got one of them, you turn the first page. The ladies, I don't know who all, but I think it tells in here. It tells in here about some of the things that they had or didn't have. They were promised every quarter that they would get provisions. I don't know I know y'all all been promised things too. Sometimes you don't get what you've been promised. What happened is we got here in 1734. We finally built a village. We packed up and moved to the new location. It wasn't overnight. I feel sure that you didn't actually move until you had something here to come to. And then in one of Reverend Bolsius's letters, he says that there's a German family still living at Old Ebenezer who was protecting the mill after it got washed out. Bolsius they built a new mill system down on today what is behind Georgia Pacific on Mill Creek. And Reverend Bolsius was asking if he could get the metal and the items from the mill, and finally it took all the way till 1744 before he was allowed to do it. But he talks about a German family living there. Well, come to find out, I found out who that family is. My ancestor is Johann Schwarzenwelder. He arrived on December the 20th, 1734, and he settled at Old Ebenezer, which I'm assuming he must have been working on the sawmill, because the sawmill lasted till 1739. And then his wife, which would be my seventh great-grandmother, died, and then he moved to New Ebenezer. And what Schwarzenwelder is, I know y'all have heard of it. Schwarz is black in German, the Welter is forest, black forest. You ever had a black forest cake, chocolate with cherries in it? Schwarzenwelder, so you're looking at an ancestor of one of them. We had Indians that were the Uchis, U-H-C-H-E, it's spelled about 5 or 6 different ways. I think that there's some Uchis on the side over there by Columbus, Georgia, and there's Uchis that lived between Ebenezer Creek and the other side of Briar Creek in Burke County. Okay.
But they're on the Oklahoma most
Right. I'm going to get to the Trail of Tears later.
Go ahead.
But anyway, when we got here, these were peaceful Indians. Oglethorpe makes some kind of treaty with them and says, we will not go north of Ebenezer Creek. But, and if you read Reverend Bose's detailed reports, he's talking about Indians who come and bring us honey, and talking about the casino tea that they had realized could be made. They're helpful to us. He wouldn't let us cross Ebenezer Creek, but when later on, before around 1750, the Yuchi Indians packed up and moved up the Savannah River. So the group that comes in that time frame, 1750, 51, and it's the people that we know today that the name stuck, the Exleys, the Ghanaians, the German names, Rovensteins, the Rons. And finally, in 1750, he agrees to let that next group go north of Ebenezer, and that's what we create as the community, which never was an organized town, known as Bethany. And that's some of the names. You go and I'm the 8th great grandson of Thomas Swigoffer. Only thing that's here that says Swigoffer is a sign down yonder that I am totally responsible for, right down there where the old Kroger. I'm the guy that wrote the letter and said, y'all got a sign about this big that's rusted and it ain't spelt right. And after I gave them all the things I had written, the guy said, how do you want that sign? I said, please spell it out like it should be. I thought I was getting a sign like this. I rode down there, there's a sign that big. You know what I'm talking about? Oh yeah, well you have, it's the one by the old Kroger. Swigoffer Creek. I'm not the only ancestor. There's a whole bunch of us in here.